Hey guys, Jeff here. Today I've got a real big video for you. It's an awesome project build in this shed right here. This shed is full of all kinds of features. It has an awning, it's a built-in bar. Boom. It has patio doors, lots of extra seating. It even has some barn doors for different features around the backside. We're gonna go through the whole project today. This is an awesome project. It might seem a little overwhelming right now, but I built this with the basic hand tools that every homeowner should have, and I think you can do this too. So let's just jump right into this, and you can follow along as I show you how to make the most amazing backyard shed slash outdoor bar. We're building basically a 12 by 12 platform. When you're constructing a deck in your head, you need to understand a few different things. One, the material doesn't always come 12 feet long. Two, sometimes the ends come split. Three, you gotta consider your space. So here we're going from a patio to a garden bed that starts to raise up. I've already checked out with level and thrown some boards in a perimeter. Basically, the ground is somewhat flat with a bit of a lean to the back, which is perfect, because what we want to do is right up here. We're going with a 2x8 frame that's going to look just right there. Bam. Now, this deck is going to be floating on blocks. We're not going to put it into concrete piers. We live in a 4-season northern climate, so when the frost comes, everything out here will all lift at the same time and then settle down at the same time again in the spring. So this is why we're gonna build it this way. It gives us flexibility, and it saves us a lot of hassle, because whenever you put something in the ground on piers, you've got to get permit. But in our area, if we just do a floating deck, there's no permit required as long as we're less than 2 feet off the ground. So this means we can just draw it out on a piece of paper, go get our material, have it delivered, and bam, you're building, and in a couple of days you're finished. So the foundation of our deck is this. We're going to take 4x4 posts, cut it into sections, stick it through the middle, and then mount our 2x8s to the side of that 4x4. So our goal to start off with is to identify where these blocks are going to go, dig a hole so that the top of the block is flush with the ground, and dig it a little bit deeper so that we can add some stone screenings in that hole to level it all off, okay? This is very important. Now, knowing the end from the beginning is the key to success. If you're going with wood, you want your joists every 16-inch on center. If you're going with like a composite board, like a Trex, you want every 12-inch on center. Don't cheat on that. So if our joists are going to be here, I want to put this block probably somewhere back here in this area, all right, so that I'm not interfering with the joist activity, okay? Okay, so my boards are a little longer than I need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the back here as my foundation. So I'm going to basically plan on having this hole right here, so that my 4x4 clears and not contacting joists. We'll block it in later, keep it simple. Then we're gonna square it off and start working from the back and build forward. And the last joist, we're just gonna leave off until we're really almost ready to go. And then we'll trim back everything all at the same time and then install our last joist. Once we have it all square, then it's time to worry about our distance. But right now, we're just gonna worry about our getting started, digging all our holes. There's nothing sexy about digging a hole. Pull your block back roughly about the same position. There we go. And get it up. No, not in the middle, not in the middle, on the side. That'll represent what it looks like when it's finished. So what we're gonna do here is we're just gonna temporarily screw all the corners together, set it on 4 blocks, make sure the blocks are actually in the right position, and then we can square off the frame. Okay, now this is all temporary, just for the purpose of layout. We have to set on the blocks, get it all square, make sure it looks good across the front of the patio, which is the most visible place. And once we have that, we'll take our square shovel and we'll cut the grass around all the blocks once they're in perfect position. This way we don't have to dig a 2-foot wide hole. We can just dig a hole relatively for the space, because all the dirt that we pull out has nowhere to go. So we're gonna throw it back in the middle. The last thing you wanna do is create these huge mounds of dirt that you gotta trip over for the rest of the job. So right away you can see that there's a problem with the block, right? There we go, to me. I'm going off the centering of the joist so that I can square off better. Now we're gonna do Matt. I'm gonna have you over here, and then you'll be over there. We're gonna measure the same distance. I want you to put the top side of the numbers right on the corner. So you stand there and do that. And we'll get the measurement and see if we're somewhat square. So I can measure to the inside or the outside. The outside's obviously easier. 195 1/4. See the number, the top of that tape? That edge of the tape is the part I want in the corner. It's actually that relevant, so we're way off, which means that two have to go way back that way. Okay. Lift it, push it all the way back. All right. Because the lumber can have a warp, you have to go corner to corner, and that erases the whatever you're doing with the warp. You can't just put a square on it. Right? This time I'm exactly 16 feet. I'm starting to like that. I'm 194, so I'm 2 inches out. 193. There we go.
Lucky gift.
Now, here's the crazy part. 10 inches to the patio there. 7 inches to the patio here. So, I know this sounds nuts, but I've got to also be parallel to the patio. So now we've got it square, we've got to pick it up and set it again. So, all three of these locations have to move. Okay, 193, same number, we're good. So it can't be square 3 out of 4 and not the 4th. When you're setting your posts, basic construction technology allows us to have a 24-inch overhang from structure. So if this is your load, you can overhang 2 feet, okay? So resist the temptation to put this block right in the front corner, because the location of the block and then where the post, and where the location of the post and where the block ends, there's about a 5-inch difference there. And so it's always gonna be visible. You can't get a good finish. So if you set it back a little bit, which is what we're gonna do, we're gonna attach all of our joists with joist hangers. Then now this becomes a ridge beam on each end. We're gonna end up doubling it up with adhesive and nails, and that'll give it enough strength to carry the whole load of those 4 points and have the overhang, and it'll be solid like a rock, okay? This gives you a nice finish off the front, and I'm gonna take the joists off and get them out of the way. If you dig these holes, this frame will be in this location, drop right to the grass. I need you to just go around and do this, because this can be moved in the hole to where the square is. All right, so the idea here basically is to take your screenings. I'm using limestone screenings. You could use stone dust as well. Just try not to use anything too big in the way of gravel. And I'm just gonna flatten out the bottom here a little bit, okay? And then we're gonna set our block in. Okay, so we're back to step one. Let's just build our box again, tack it together, get it on the block, square it, move some dirt, make sure we're happy with the actual locations. If we have to move a block or do a little packing to level off at this point, now you wanna do it. And then, as you can see, I've got some additional blocks in here as well. This is for the next video. We're gonna be building a post frame shed here inside on this deck. Not every time you have to pour concrete or just be in dirt. In this situation, we're gonna build the shed on the deck, but we're integrating it so that the posts are carrying all the load of the roof. That way the deck is more than strong enough to support the walls and all the other functions going on with it. Now, when you're building a ground level deck or any structure, you've got to keep in mind that we're transferring load from points to a ridge, and that ridge has to be strong like in your house. In home construction, we see 2x8 or 2x10. 2x8 in residential construction is actually about the weakest you're ever going to get. And it was really a budget cut thing back in the 70s. A lot of townhouses were built like that, and you can tell because the floors have a bit of bounce. Now, if the deck has a little bit of bounce, it's not an issue. So 2x8 is the smallest you want to go, and no more than a 12-foot length, okay? Now, there is no permit requirements. There's no code requirements for this, but that doesn't mean we get to be lazy. It doesn't mean we try to be cheap and go with 2x6. If you want a deck to last, you got to build it to last. So we're going to use 2x8. We're going to double the rim so it can carry the load and transfer the points. We're going to pretend we're building this 10 feet off the ground and build it with the same integrity, so that way we know it's going to last. So we have our basic in place. Now, when you're working with a floating foundation, that means you need to usually do everything twice, all right? And that's fine. So right now, Matt is identifying the highest point on our perimeter. Is it over here?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a solution to how high this is, and that is just to move some of that soil. Because I really love that being something like that, okay? Our goal here is to try to eliminate too much work and work with the property. Okay, so we got to move soil then, because I'm not going to lift 1.5 inches over here. That's too much. Remember, the average step in the house is 8 inches. So right now, this piece of wood is 7 1/4, and with the piece of wood here, it makes it 8 1/4, which is pretty close to normal. So even if I put a door on my shed right here, right, all I need is 1 patio stone on the ground, and all of a sudden, it's a normal step into the house. because I can use a 2-inch stone on limestone screening outside. Always thinking end from the beginning when you're building, okay? I want to move my whole structure forward so that this post is right on the back corner. Okay, so let's do that first. And that obviously means we're going to need to do some shovel work here, right? So let's just get the shovels out. Let's move the dirt and then we'll square this off. Well, you know, whenever it's nice enough to work in Canada, it's always super hot. So now I got this as my post. I want to basically square the whole deck off of this if I can, which is why we set up all those other holes to begin with. So before we go any further, let's go measure across to cross and see how square we are. 17 feet 3/4. 17 feet and 1/4. 3/4 and 1/4. So I've got to move my block here. I'm gonna put my shovel in against my hole. I'm just gonna use a lever. I'm gonna wedge that over a little bit. Same thing over here. All right. Now, as a DIY project, if you're not perfectly square, you can get away with a little bit of a cheat here, because your first board, you're gonna wanna have an overhang of about 1 inch, right? And if you're doing a 12-foot deck and your plan is to put this last board on over top as a cap, then you get to put all your boards here, put all your splits here, cut 4 or 5 inches off, and then add the last rim joist after the fact. That's right, we'll get to that later. I am considering all of your unique needs here by showing you a system that you can modify the finish so it's perfect every time, right? We're square. Our blocks on our corners are all making contact, except for this one. This one has to move over. Perfect. Wow, this is actually going to work. Okay, so now from the front, we're going to just throw in a screw into each of these blocks, carry the load, and level this all off with our 6-foot level. That'll be awesome. Remember, when you're using a level this long, anytime that bubble's in between the two lines, you're relatively level. You're level to the point where no one's going to walk and fall over because it's got such a bad slope. The other thing about a floating deck that's kind of cool is even after it's all completed, you've always got the ability to come over here from the outside, put in a bar as a lever, lift your deck, which will take this with it, and you can slide a shim underneath through this gap, okay? So you've always got the ability to level it off over time if it needs a little wiggle here and then. So I'm perfectly level here. That's a miracle. I haven't even attached anything yet. This is awesome. So here comes tip number 1 to making your deck last. You don't want to leave exposed, untreated wood in your deck frame. So go grab one of these buckets called Cut and Seal, all right? And it's not perfect, but it's also not sitting in water, the cut. Dunk it. All right, seal it. Done. It's that easy. It's easier to dunk than paint. Use your foot as a lever. Perfect. All right, that's the foundation. Now we got to make minor adjustments and add a little bit more strength to the whole system. Let's just recap, because there's a lot going on there. Your 4 corners have to make contact with your ridges. In our design, my corner is actually structured from my shed, so that complicates the scenario. You need to have it level, all 4 sides. You got to have it square, so you measure corner to corner. And you have to dig and redig and position and tamp and add everything you got to do to get everything structural out as far as elements are concerned in a perfect location. Make sure when you cut, you seal. And then when you're done, perfect. Take out a measuring tape from the outside and make a mark everywhere there's a red square on your tape measure. And you don't have a tape measure with red squares, buy one. Check out our link in the video description. You're going to want to have one of these for sure. This marks every location of a joist, and X is where the meat of the wood goes. Okay, so the red square line here, that means the edge of it, and you put an X. And here we go. How did I know that was going to happen? So this is actually in the wrong location for me. So what I'm going to do in this scenario is I am going to go I'm going to go to 122. Hey Matt, can you mark a line there to 122? We're going to translate it on both sides. Okay. And scratch out the next one to the right of that. Thank you. This is where my last joist is going to be. All right. If you're going to do irregular joist spacing to satisfy your blocks, which may be necessary, just go less than 16. And the reason you can get away with that is because we're going to use the camo hidden fastener system. No one's going to see the screw surfaces and realize your joists are lined up incorrectly. That's another one of the key components to making sure your deck lasts a lifetime. All right, we're just moving dirt, hanging joist hangers. Basically, we'll show you how to install these in a second, but I'm just laying it all out, staying organized, trying to keep the job site clean. We're going to just backfill some of these holes a little bit, fill the rest of the hole up with our stone screenings. We're just making sure that everything's going to fit. And then before we can actually put these joists in place, we got to cover everything with landscape cloth. So, whenever you got a ground level deck, you got to be careful that the weeds don't grow through the deck. Nothing worse than having a hairy deck. Yeah. Well, someone might actually find that funny. You never know. We're just eyeballing this, right? Anything that's no good to us, let's get rid of it. It's all garbage. Now this crap only comes 3 feet wide, but it's a 100-foot roll. Hold on to your end and just toss it at me. All right? Okay. So what you want to do is aiming to line it up like that and about a foot past where you want it. Okay? The idea here is this is just a weed barrier and grass inhibitor, right? Here's how we hang a joist hanger. We have a piece of cut joist, and you'll notice that in this case, and every manufacturer is different, so you got to really line it up, okay? You get the joist in the hanger so that the front edge of this hanger is on the same black line for your every 16. Now, this side of the joist has got a big notch out of it from the edge of the tree. So you don't really know where the top is unless you use a block to set it, okay? Once you got it set, you're going to take structural screws. They come in these boxes. It comes with the bit. You're going to set your first screw. That's it. All right. Now we're going to hang every one of these just like that. Then we can put the joists in and then tighten everything up, okay? And we still have the ability to rotate a little bit if it's got a little bit of a warp to it. All right? And that's how you can set all your joist hangers. And you just drop all your sticks in place. This is so much easier to do when you got 3 hands. When you see this all come together, it'll all make sense. But for now, I'm going to throw in a couple of timber lock screws. When you're using joist hangers, take a look at this. These holes on the side are designed for a screw to go in within the first 3/8 to 1/2 inch of the wood. Now, over the course of 50 years, that's one of the weakest places in the whole structure because you're opening up gaps in the wood on both sides. Moisture gets in there, starts to cause problems. And then when those get soft, the propensity is for the frame to be able to start bowing out on you. Now, I'm not talking about a 5-year problem, but we're talking about a 50-year maintenance-free deck here, right? We run a timber lock all the way in 4 inches into that joist, and I'm going to tighten up the entire structure all at the same time. And that will give its lateral strength. Bam. Now that is how you build a deck. Code allows you to get away with some of these joist hangers, the screws go in an angle, and it just barely catches the wood. Not sufficient. When you got technology like this for 50 cents a screw, throw the extra $3 in your deck and get the extra 20 years out of it. Now, generally the rule of thumb when you have a joist hanger is every hole has to have a structural nail or screw in it. Now, if you understand what this means, this joist hanger is rated for 2x8 or 2x10. Which means it's rated to carry a 2x10 over 16 feet, which is a bigger span. And our ground level deck, it really has nowhere to fall because we're kind of on the ground already. So you're going to have to forgive me But since there's no building code, I don't see the benefit of wasting those structural screws. 3 is fine. I'm not even going to go do the time to go in the side. I'm using timber lock to hold it together because all these extra screws on the side aren't going to provide me any benefit. All it's going to do is cost me about another 30 bucks for the deck. Just to give us a little flexibility with splitting finishing boards, we're going to cut everything 3 inches shy. And we're going to use this as joist hanger. This is designed to be on the outside edge. So you actually fill all your screws in, and then you have to cut your joist shy, about a 1/4 inch for each side because of the screw holes. All right? And then after we're done, we're going to take a reciprocator, we'll trim the ends, and then we're going to cap the ends with cedar so that when you look at the deck visually, all you see is one big cedar plank, and you're not going to see exposed end boards, okay? So we're just trying to dress this up. The double rim we're going to do soon, so we're going to laminate, and then we're going to put in our bolts, and then we're going to use a 16-foot piece of cedar to span over the double rims and make sure that visually all you see is one board. And from the beginning, always have a plan, not just to make it strong, but to make it look pretty. Okay. You're going to take exactly 1/2 inch off of that joist, because all of these screw heads create a problem. See gum. Boom.
None?
Well, that was just too easy.
Drum roll.
Oh, great. One of the neighbors is out for a good smoke. That's nice. Look at that. Perfect every time. You knew it was coming. You knew it was coming. Right. I don't want to hear it. We're going to throw the cloth in the last little bit here. This is so much easier if this is just gone. Just cut the extra. Drop it and walk, man. Just never cuts fast, and it just adds so much danger to the day. It's not necessary to hack away. Every time I see someone do that, I'm just like, there's another trip to the hospital. I'd hate to see you have a trip to the hospital with the back of your hands split wide open.
I don't take trips to the hospital.
That's where all your nerves are, by the way.
I let it score.
In case you're wondering. God put all your nerves in the back of your hands so you can protect yourself from defenders with the front. Okay. All right. Point loads on a deck are notorious for being never sufficient without some extra blocking. Whew. We're going to throw in a few screws today, hold everything in place. Might I suggest that if you're in business and you're doing this for a client, your last step of the day should be to make sure everything is blocked and square and level, and then drive your extra screws in it, because they're going to come out at the end of the day, and they're going to have a peek, and they're going to judge your work based on how level it is, even if you haven't done that part of the job yet. And their satisfaction is going to be dependent on that situation. All right, so now tomorrow we are going to come back. We are going to properly finish off blocking. We're going to go through that process. We're going to cap our rim joists, go through that process. We're going to throw through our structural bolts into our vertical members. And then we're going to add our decking and go through all of the challenges we're facing with that, with our invisible screw system. By the end of tomorrow, we should have ourselves a functioning deck and 4 sticks in the ground. How nice. Cheers. All right, guys, next morning here, it's bright and early and sunny and hot. And so what we're going to do is we're going to just pick up where we left off by cutting the ends of these off, laminating our beams, finishing off anything structural and bracing, and then we can get right into decking. Let's just get this done here. Always making sure that you got plenty of pressure pushing into it. That way it's the blade that's bouncing around and not the tool. And the last of the 2 timber lock screws. Get rid of this wobble. Before I go any further, I want to get one in the other end so I'm not warping the end of my design. Just making sure to drive it nice and flush because we still have to double up the rim joist. So here's my portable table saw. I've got to turn this 2x8 into a 2x6. I can't use a 2x8 for blocking on a ground level deck because there's too many obstructions. So I'm just going to rip this down a little bit and we'll get that done in a second. So the end of the saw here is 1.5 inches. That's close enough. I'll use that as my guide. There we go. So even though the blade is old and the wood is wet, you can see the difference in power when you're using a corded tool. Ah, I love my corded tools. Okay, so before we can laminate our double beams, we've got to finish all of the structure inside. So that means getting all of these posts level and secure and bolted in place. And this one is way out. It's probably really obvious on camera actually, isn't it? Let's see. That's about level. What we did last night was just toss a couple screws in so it wouldn't blow around. We'll toss in a couple more and try to get at least level in one direction. There we are. That's pretty decent. Realizing that because we're doing with an 8-foot structure, there's gonna be a lot of movement in this regardless. So what I wanna do here is I just wanna get it close enough in this direction so that when I put my header on, it'll tie the posts together the same distance as the base and it'll kind of self-square. Now I'm putting on 4 screws, 1, 2, 3, and 4, top and bottom. That'll give it some rigidity. The 1/2 inch bolt will go through the middle and my other block is gonna go here. That'll give us enough strength that no matter what kind of windstorm we're facing, it's not going anywhere. Brilliant. Okay, so we're gonna cut our blocking now. 14 3/4. We'll get that in, screwed in place, screw it to this, and then we'll put in a bolt. And if there's anyone out there who hasn't seen this yet on the channel, this line here is the 0 degree line. This is where my saw blade cuts, okay? Even has an adjustment on the foot, so it's easy to know where to go. And in order to cut square, all we do, release the lock, lift the table up a little bit for clearance, hold this tight to the wood, and drive across the top of your square. So make your mark, line up your cut. Perfect every time when your table's set deep enough. All right. There we are. That is how you make all your small cuts out here without having to bring a table saw and a chop saw. You can do all the building with one tool. This actually becomes structural as well. So if you have a piece of decking board that's hanging 3 inches over here, right, and it's cut around and you're stepping here and there's no support, you're gonna break right through. So this allows us a little bit more security for that situation. We're just using pressure treated screws. Oh. And we don't need many, just a couple. Remember, this block isn't carrying any load, it's just stability. Nice and tall on the top. Making sure that when you screw these in, you're using a triangle formation. That's where the strength is. Leave lots of room to run the bolt in the middle. So we are going to be going with a 1/2 inch by 8 inch carriage bolt. It's a structural galvanized metal bolt, and here's the code. Codes are on everything that's structural, so an engineer could easily come by and confirm that you use the right hardware. So there's no cheating. All right, we want to make sure that we get all the way through the other side with lots of room for the washer and the nut. And we also want to be able to compress this to the point where this head is sunken right into the wood, nice and flush, so that we can laminate this beam. Okay, here we go. We're using 1/2 inch drill bit. It's is cold steel, cold forged, sorry. And this will shatter or shear off if it overheats. So you're best to be on a drill function like this, okay? Minimum speed, something like number 2 is usually fine. You line this up and you want to push nice and straight. And as this gets clogged up with wood, you want to pull it out to release it. because it only overheats if it gets full of wood and it's still trying to spin inside that circle. It'll overheat that way. This works great. You hear that start to work? Back it out. Clean off the bit. Back it out. Clean it off. You can do this a few times until you get through the other side. Oh. Pretty sure that was the other side. Now this is an exact fit. You can't get this in just by pushing. This is carrying structural load and they're designed to be exactly the same height, right to the thread of that. It requires a hammer to put in. That's good, but it's not flush yet. Now we're flush. Just remember, if you have to take this out, you're gonna hit the hammer on this end and knock it out for whatever reason. This bolt is then garbage because you've changed the thread. Okay, so resist the temptation to use these bolts until you are absolutely confident you're ready to be finished. All right, we're gonna tighten these on by hand, and then we're gonna use a wrench to sink this washer into the wood as well. And that's how we're gonna know we've got a good compression. You're gonna hear the wood complaining here. It'll go squeak and crack and creak. That's not a problem. You want it in there, buried. All right. So that under pressure and under force, there's no more wiggle room. If this is moving around and this is loose, it'll slowly unthread. And then what good is it? Okay, so now I'm gonna block up the rest of these things. And then it's time to laminate the joist. All right, okay, well, here we go. So, I know in the beginning of the video, I said that you could basically build this with a couple of drills and a skill saw. If you do have toys, you should use them because this makes it a lot easier. Generally speaking, we're gonna glue and screw our cedar over top of this, which is why the timber locks and our carriage bolts had to be flush mounted. Doubling up a joist, there's two ways to do it. You can add 16, I'm sorry, you can add nails, okay, every 2 inches, spacing every joist, okay? Or you can glue and screw. Generally speaking, because we're on a ground level deck, again, there's no code, but we're gonna improvise the best system in case you're building a deck using this and higher off the ground, which by the way is easier. Ground level decks are a real pain in the butt. You gotta put the dirt somewhere. You gotta manage the slope and it's hard to get level when you're on the ground. If you're gonna build at least 1 foot off the ground, it makes life so much easier. But for here, we're on the ground. Might as well show you how to do the hard way. And just a quick recap, because we've done a lot of structure here. Carriage bolt to point load. This is carrying load. That's carrying load. Every location. We've got timber lock to keep things from opening up. We've got joist hangers to keep things stabilized and to keep them from rocking. Okay, that's why they're pinched side to side. And now we're going the extra length of doubling up the strength of this rim so that it's strong enough to carry the load of someone standing in the middle and passing it along to these point loads, okay? That's really all this is. It's a little bit overkill, but for 30 bucks, you can do a lot of overkill. Now, we want to take a look at crown on this. So this is my top. This has a propensity to go like this, okay? So under deflection, it straightens out. That's really what I'm looking for here. I don't think I mentioned to crown all the rest of the joist, but you really should as you're working. And because I'm using a nail gun on a deck, I don't need to use the glue. But like I said, if you're gonna go with screws, then you should. What I'm gonna suggest if you're working alone is grab a clamp. Let this be your extra pair of hands. You really wanna start your nailing Oh, the compressor's turned down. I have it set for when I was spray painting. That explains it. Okay, this should be working better now. There we go. 2x8 means 4 nails every 2 inches, okay? And then we're gonna go down here, start at the other end, lift this flush because I've got a crown on it. And if any point is too high, I can just step on it. That's the easiest way to do this. There we go. That's that simple. So just to recap, keep it level, keep it square, keep the sticks plumb, make sure you're using structural components when you're building structure, double up anything that's got to carry load to a point load. You can build your own deck. You can do it, and you can do it yourself, all right? There's no reason why the average homeowner can't pull something like this off in their backyard. Bottom line is, it's going to be two-man effort out here for at least 5 days, maybe 6 for us to do the whole build. If you want to hire a contractor nowadays to do that, you're looking somewhere around, with material costs, closer to $20,000. That's the world we live in. And if you find a better deal than that, you probably don't want them working in your home. So what I'm doing here is I'm just taking 6 boards, sticking them together. I do this all the time at the Home Depot on a cart. I'll line up a bunch of 2x4s, put them together. The one that's all warped jumps right out at you. You don't have to pick them up one at a time and eyeball them. Just do this. Put the one back away and you can have this. Now, this one's got a warp. The rest of them are really straight. That's awesome. Like, I don't have to pick through this. Note, I didn't buy this at Home Depot. They don't carry this kind of quality cedar. If you're in Ottawa, go to Perkins Lumber. They don't pay me to say this, but their cedar is the best stuff, I think, in Ontario. Cheers. When I'm marking out my deck, I'm actually going to start a 1/2 inch past the back, just fingertip thick, really. I'm going to try to maintain that gap all the way along. Our total deck distance is not a whole 12 feet. It is a little bit shy. Looks like about a 3/4 inch overhang here. That's perfect. When you're doing a 12 by 12, take my advice here. Cut the rim joist about 3 inches shy on purpose. This allows you to double up the edge if you want to. It gives you overhang on both sides. Gives you the flexibility in case things are a little bowed. Like homeowners, you know, you're not going to get everything perfect the first time you build a deck. So give yourself that mercy. And then when you're done, you can trim the boards down with a chalk line. All right? So we'll start with a little overhang on each end. And if there's a bit of bow somewhere, we can straighten it out as we go. But it gives you that mercy. All right? Now we're just going to trace out around our posts. Use a jigsaw to set that to the depth we want. Right now, if I stick a pencil underneath here, I am a good 2 inches. That's too much overhang, okay? That means I've got 3.5 inches of meat and 2 inch overhang. It's too much because my screws are going to be here and here, and there's too much chance that you could step on this and lift the board out, okay? So we want to get a little closer. We only want a 1 inch overhang maximum. Here's some great advice for people who are installing deck boards, okay? If it's just a deck and this is a post for a railing, then this is going to be finished surface. You're probably going to use a cedar post too. What I'm building here is actually, it's a post frame shed. So all of my surfaces are getting covered. So I'm going to leave a nice bit of gap. Because I'm close to the ground, I want a 1/4 inch all around just to allow for any swelling. If you're not close to the ground, you can go a little bit tighter, okay? Give yourself like a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch gap. All right, use a square. You measure underneath. Right now my gap is 2.5. I only want 1.5. So I'm going to come 1.5 inches. Half, 1.5. There's my line. Okay, same thing over here. That's my garret. Here we go. Half, 1.5. Boom. And that's what I'm going to cut. Okay, perfect every time. Just a quick tip when you're buying your blades. Zoom in here, Max. Check this out. Okay. That says fine wood finish. There's extra fine wood finish as well. If you're really worried about it, I just found that the fine wood finish blade is more than enough when you're working on your cedar. You're always going to get a couple of hairs and then you got to sand them out, but it's a good start. Oh, hang on a second. That's fresh from the factory and it's already got a tilt. That's great. Okay, whatever. I was due for a new jigsaw, eh? No need to drill. You can actually buy them even thinner and they're called scribing blades, but I find they break too easy. and then come back to get the excess. That's one. Now, because I promised everybody you can do this deck with a skill saw, here's the other option you have. You can do this cut and this cut with a skill saw, okay? From the top and the bottom side. And then you can take your utility knife and just cut that, put it over an empty space and hit it with your hammer. It'll break right out nice and clean, okay? And then you can use a utility knife to clean up the edge if you need to. But if you have a jigsaw, like I said, perfect every time. I'm going to be using the ACQ deck screw. All right, this is a 3-inch, and it's brown. It's going to be about the same color as the cedar after I'm done staining. Everything between these posts is actually framed into the shed, so it's door or wall, so it won't matter. So I'm going to go surface screw. I like to do as many surface screws as I can when I'm starting a deck, just to help keep things straight. 1 inch from the edge, flush to the surface. And I also like to surface screw the outside edge, okay, because I want to have this screw. I can't trust the camel screw from this angle to go off the side and in, so we're going to have to do some surface screws. And I want to go right into that rim joist. Okay, again, just to the surface. Try not to break the surface too much. Here we go. We're going to do this all the way along. And then the exposed part of the deck over here, we're going to do the camo screws. So here is the camo system. You've probably seen this before. Been using this for, wow, 15 years. That's amazing. It's amazing how something can be on the market that long and it's still finding new customers going, wow, I've never seen that before. The screws are snipped at the end, all right, so they don't split the wood. And they're reverse threaded. So this goes into the board. This is reverse threaded to help pull the board tight at the end. This feeds it on an angle. It's not 45 degrees, it's more like around 65. And it goes just below the surface of this edge. And it drives through the board into the joist on that angle. And then when the bit makes contact with it, you're completely in. All right, you just release. And now here's the surface. That's around the side of the surface. So when you have all of your boards together on this board, they become invisible. After the first couple of rains, that wood will actually swell and close over the hole, and you'll never see a fastener again. This is one of the reasons I can make this a claim that it's going to be a 50-year deck, because when you don't have surface screws, you don't have anything promoting holding of water or access of water past your finish. Every screw damages the wood and creates an access for water, and it starts an early decay around the screw head. Because we're going off the side, the surface of our deck doesn't decay, it doesn't have splinters, you don't get advanced rot, and it lasts a hell of a lot longer. You know, most guys in the decking world, if they're lining up, they'll throw a chalk line, and then they'll bend the board to meet the chalk line. They only use it at the very beginning, which means it's useless. If you're not going to use a laser line or a chalk line every row, your best bet, take the 6 boards, get the straightest board and start with it, and then just go. Over the course of a whole deck, no one's going to tell any difference. And if you're one of those guys that uses the chalk line, put away the toy and just learn how to pick a good piece of wood to start. All right, cedar is notorious for splitting. The weakest spot is right here off this cut. Okay, I'm going to show you how to install screw right here. And for everybody who doesn't believe this is going to work, once you've seen this, you owe me $100. Go in reverse and then drive it. Pay me now. Okay, now for the rest of your deck, you want to do spacing. Now, if your wood is dry like this is and you're elevated off the ground and you're going to have a good breeze, then go with, might I say, 1/8 of an inch. It means it's going to shrink a little bit, or you can even go tight if it's wet. When you're near the ground, you want to leave a good space because it's going to swell a little bit, all right, generally speaking. So I'm using my framing square. This is my triangle, and it is 3/16, so almost a full quarter. And that's my space. Nice and simple, all right? And if I use this all the way consistently everywhere I'm going, I'll be in great shape to maintain my spacing. Again, because this is going to be inside the shed, I'm just using these screws. This will help me to identify where my joist is if I need to have contact with it at a later date. Attaching these walls and the wall plate directly to the floor, because we're going to be using the post rail system. So I have my posts. All I need now is rails to put my walls on. So I am going to put one rail right near the bottom without ground contact so that everything stays nice and dry. You never know what the future is going to hold. What kind of features and benefits you might want to put in your shed later. So knowing where the joists are could be of benefit. Okay. You can see at this end, the board has a bit of a propensity to want to make some movement. Not a big deal. We can shorten that up. We're going to throw our camo on here. We're going to load our screw. I'm simply going to pull it forward and then drive the screw in. Hold it in place. All right, done. Now I'm going to come over here and compress it nice and tight and then drive it again. Now, once you're done putting screws on both sides at every joist, your board's finished. Then and only then do you move to the next board. Remember, when you're working by yourself, be happy with everything you install, one piece at a time. Don't go running ahead thinking I'll just throw a few screws in and catch up the rest later. You'll miss them, they'll cup, they'll warp. Make sure that you're happy with everything you've touched as you go. That is the rule, not just for DIYers, it's also a good rule for pros. Remember, if you've got a decking project and you're interested in getting these screws in this tool, check out our Amazon link in the video description below. We've got there as well. All right. Okay. Now the first two boards are done, everything's straight. We're gonna just follow this line for the rest of the deck. Piece of cake. All right, now don't go anywhere, because now you know how to build a deck, we still want to show you how to finish it. Remember, there's been a lot of changes in technology and materials we've used in the last 50 years, and most consumers are really behind the time because people that are advertising deck finishing are mostly box stores, and they carry the worst product in the market. So in the end of this video, I'm going to show you the best thing that's on the market and how you can get your hands on it. Well guys, this is Jenna of Jenna and Matt's Through House. Thanks for coming out. She's going to join me for a bit, help me put down the surface of the deck, and I'm going to teach her the ins and outs of doing this, because we're just doing the first part of the project. This is going to be a three-phase project. Three-phase, right?
Yep,
You're going to
all the way around.
Steam room and then a hot tub over here?
Hopefully.
Somewhere around the other side. But you're going to put the deck in regardless?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, got it. All right, so first I got to show you how to place your deck boards, because both sides could be faced up. Okay. But you see how they come with a rainbow?
Yep.
Or a smile?
Okay. Yep.
You want to install it like a rainbow.
Okay.
Okay? Because when it's like this, it's just, it wants to cup.
Okay.
And if it goes like this, then it holds water in the middle and then the rod early. We're building this the last 50 years, so if we install it like this and does any cupping at all, the water's still running off. All right? And then the only thing we want to look for is if there's splits. Put the splits to the other end. You got it. All right? Piece of cake. So we're just going to grab a few boards, get them in position,
Okay.
and then that's a split. They're up. What we're doing, Jenna, is I'm trying to go about a ½ an inch past the deck, and then we'll use this as our spacer. Okay? Bam, that's it. It's that easy. We squeeze this and it opens up.
Okay.
Set it there. Oh.
And it does what? It just stays there?
Well, it usually stays there, but this edge is kind of worn a little bit, so I'll have to hold it in place. And then we load it up with screws. And then you can screw your side, and I'll screw mine.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that good?
Keep going.
Keep going.
Until this part here hits the metal.
That's what she said.
You're gonna have to turn your handle and go. There you go.
Woo.
You got it. All right.
Okay.
And you see how the screw goes off the side?
Yep.
So there's nothing on the surface.
Perfect.
So it won't splinter. Right? So this will be barefoot friendly.
Perfect.
All right. and then we're just gonna go down one joist at a time to the end of the board.
Okay.
And then when we're done, we'll start all over again.
Seems pretty easy. Hard for me to mess up. Good or more?
You gotta push, there you go.
There we go.
If you push, then the screw head will get in the hole and engage.
Okay.
If you're not pushing hard enough, then it's just gonna spin around.
Perfect.
All right?
Do you want me to just keep doing this?
Yeah!
Does that make sense?
We just gotta work our way across the whole deck. All right, let me see what's going on here.
Maybe you just have a better touch than I do.
All right, I'm gonna teach you one trick. This is interesting, because I've never considered this before, but you see the shape of that is like a star?
Yep.
Okay, so put the bit on it before pull the trigger. Make sure that it's in that. Just give it a little bit of a okay? Now push and then pull the trigger.
Push and then
push
pull.
on the screw and then pull the trigger. There you go.
There we go.
If you pull the trigger and then push, you're just spinning on the head.
Okay,
All right?
perfect.
You see how the board is kind of curving?
Yep.
It's easier to fix that curve now than later.
Okay.
The longer the distance, the easier it is to fix. So pinch this board nice and shut. Throw your screw in. Look at that. Awesome.
Better.
Okay. Now you can see, this isn't all that difficult, is it?
No.
Day like today, I want one of those umbrella hats. There you go. Don't be afraid to push. Because once you get this down, you can do another 2,000 square feet of this all by yourself without any problem. Ready? Push and then pull. Boom. You're hired. Oh, you're waiting on me. That's awesome. Easiest way to cut off a post is to buy yourself a $500 saw that's twice as big. But most of us don't own that. So we'll just show you how to use a regular skill saw here. I'm just gonna use this. I'm gonna use that as my cutting guide, line my mark up on my saw blade, and then I'm gonna use the hole to then re-establish the line here, and then here, and that'll finish the cut. There we go. So I'm gonna be using this to create a table to guide. These saws can be a little heavy, so we're just gonna line up those two black marks, and away we go. This time I line up the black mark with the cut. Last cut, we'll get everything nice and flush. Perfect every time. Next step is to put the saddles on. This is designed for a 4x4 post, it's 3.5 wide. And then this section here is 3 inches, which represents the thickness of 2 boards put together. And we want that to be flush off the post. Here we are. We'll set these all in place here. I seem to be just tall enough. Wow, I'm a monster. So there's still a misconception out there that you need structural nails. A lot of guys are still working with structural nails. It's a pain in the butt. Hammer nails all day long. You can just drive a screw with a 6-sided hex head here. Like, this is so much faster. Structural screws, of course, have a stamp on them, and there's a number. That number is related to the strength capacity of each screw. So if you're on a job site and an inspector sees that screw, they can read that number and know that it's rated for hanging all kinds of joists and hardware and anything structural, the same capacity that a nail is. So there's nothing new to do here, just got to put a screw in every one of these holes. Piece of cake. Now you can be your own structural engineer on projects that don't require a permit. So we should qualify that. Where I am here in Ontario and Ottawa, the building code says as long as it's less than 10 feet tall and the outside dimension is less than 10 by 10, there's no permit on temporary structures like this. So I can build whatever I want. So for me, that means I don't have any inspections and no rules to follow. It doesn't mean we don't follow good building practice. We just don't have to follow any rules. Now, there we go. I'm ready to roll. I just need to make some of my beams now, eh? This is gonna be quick. To make beams, the best way to do that is this. Measure at the base, outside to outside. Yeah. In this case, 113 7/8. And what we want to do is we want to make our posts exactly 113 7/8, or a beam, sorry, so that when we put it in, we just go flush here and flush over there. And any little oddities in the way that it's sitting, you know, there's still a little bit of flex left in this. It'll work itself out in the wash. All right. All right, we're gonna learn you something today. Here we go. This is a little strange here to be using my square technique. Just gonna draw a line and free cut it. In a scenario like this, you want to cut from this side. Okay. Whatever dominant hand you're using to cut, you want that to be furthest away from your sawhorse. That way the excess material falls away and it's not any weight on it, okay? So I'm just gonna line up my saw blade point here, and I'm gonna look to see if the teeth are on that line, and they are. Once I start, it's a short distance to navigate and you can get out of whack. Once I start cutting, I'm gonna keep an eye on this, but I wanna keep this plate parallel to the board. And as long as I push straight through, I should be just fine. You'd think I've done this once or twice. I think I just got lucky. All right. Okay. 113 7/8. That's awesome. Now comes the interesting part. I'll show you this. If I put them together end to end, look at the bow. Matt already drew this out for me, showed me the curve. This one's got a curve too. And it's going this way. Okay? It's what we call a crown. And because this is going to be a structural element that takes the weight of the roof, and in a 4-season climate we get snow load, we want the crown up. We also have a bow, which is great, because what we're going to do is we're going to laminate this sucker together and pull the screws nice and tight and make ourselves a beam. So what we're going to do is we're going to screw the ends together. We're going to do all this on angles. And I'm going to make sure that they're flush, because there's a lot of movement in a lot of directions. There we go. That does a nice job there of closing that gap, eh? Funny thing is about structural beams is this wood is a lot stronger when it's all nailed together. Now for me, it's a very short roof. It's not a big span. It's already overkill, but that's because I got the experience to go with it. If you're not sure what to do, you can always take your nail gun. Now that I got this together, look at that. Wow, that's quite a warp. Time for another trick. We're going to close this gap and get rid of this extra bit of heave here, okay? And the way we're going to do that is because there's a gap. If you were to put a screw on an angle, by the time it hits the wood over here, it's higher up the board. So I like that angle. I'm going to go like this. And this is, by doing this on an angle and not closing it as I screw, it'll close on its own, and it'll actually sink this down to the same height as this board. So there's the height of the first board. They're different. So I'm going to take this gap and make it work for me by screwing on an angle. Now I've made contact. I'll do this slow. So we're just going to tack this together in a few spots. Try not to put a hole in my hand, Jeff. So it's still protruding a little bit, all right? I'm not happy with that because I'm going to be putting a roof structure on it. I want it flat. I'm gonna install it for today so we can move forward. And then next time I come, I'm gonna bring my hand planer. And I'm just gonna clean this up a little bit before I put any interior wood in there for the roof. Yeah, I don't like planing off a ladder, but you know, we gotta move forward today. Next step, stick that beam in, I guess. A little bit of a Laurel and Hardy scenario here, but we'll be all right. Okay. Ba-da-boom. All right, up we go. The cool thing about these saddles is it not just holds it in place, it keeps it from rolling left and right on you. So it's a really safe way to work. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure it's flush over here first and add some more structural screws. And then I'll come over there and tighten up that side. Okay, all right, well, here we go. All right, boom, that's officially not going anywhere. Now, I just want to give a warning here. I don't want you using what you see here as a homemade solution to removing a structural load-bearing wall and sticking this in place. This is not what it is. This is just snow load of a small roof of a shed that has no building code, okay? So this is more than enough for our liability scenario. But don't go thinking, oh, that's it, just a couple of deck screws every couple feet, we're good to go there, bud. Nope, nope, you'll get someone killed.
Here, bud.
There we go. All right, so we got a bit of a twist. This is just a shed, okay? Don't go hurting yourself, but to make it pretty when we're done, it's better if it's out level by a hair and you don't have any wood sticking out past the corner. That way your sheathing goes on nice. So in this case, because I've got these structural screws that are a little pronounced, if one of these beams is sticking out just a hair, it's not an issue, okay? Trust me, when you're building a shed, you don't want to turn this into a lifelong project. So you're building it, it's because you need it. You don't want this dragging into next year. Here we go. If you've ever seen framers frame a house, from the street, everything looks really nice. You get up close, nasty. This is called framing carpentry. It's not finished carpentry or finishing. I don't mean people from Finland. I mean like to finish the job. That make any sense? Thanks, Max. Max actually reminded me to finish the job here. There we are. I'm gonna screw both sides. So I'm using an 8-foot 4x4 post in a deck block that was installed flush with the ground. So I know that this is only 8 feet tall from the grass, plus my 7 1/4 usually is what a 2x8 is. I'm well within my 10 foot even after I put my roof on. Easy math. I'm not even gonna try to get close to 10 feet. I want my finished panel on the front here no more than 8 feet, all right? Because I don't wanna have to have a seam and then do waterproofing and waste building materials and cutting off all this extra waste. Keeping it the total height under 8 feet makes all your building materials work with one seam, and it's still much easier. So resist the temptation, make your shed 10 feet tall. It really is a waste of time and money. All right, oh, I forgot. I'm gonna go do the other beam now. You don't need to see that one. Same thing, just a little closer to the ground is all. We are creating a single slope roof, after all. What do you think, Max? Let me get this bad boy here. The next thing we want to do is we want to put 2x4 on end to frame in our roof, okay? And really what we're looking for here is we want to find the slope, because the same angle here will be over here, but on the other side of the wood. Now, you get into watching people build stuff on YouTube. They're trying to explain it from a position of, oh, I've done this 1,000 times and I've got the right tools. When you're alone at home alone, you got to rely on this thing. So here's a system that'll work every time when you want to translate an angle. First, you got to measure the height of both of these. Now, I am at 92 3/4, and we'll get this height, 81 1/2. Okay, Or because I gotta have the same denominator to do math, we'll make this 4 by doubling it, so we got 2 quarters, okay? Now I separate it. So I'm left with 1/4, and I'm left with 11. 11 1/4 is the difference in the height. So all I do, and I know this is gonna seem almost really silly, measure from the ground to 11 1/4. Now remember, all of this is getting covered by sheathing. Okay, there's 11 1/4. If the height from the ground to that mark is the same difference as that height to this height, and these are level, it's now a parallelogram. So I can put a screw right off the old corner here. Okay? And I can take my lumber, set that on the corner where the post is, rest it on the screw, and simply trace that angle from the backside. That's it. Okay? Now I've got the same angle on the front. Now my roof, I'm not looking for an overhang on the front, okay? I'm going to make my roof square, and then I'm going to put on my metal, and then I'm going to cap it with a piece of wood afterwards. I don't need an overhang. If I want an overhang, I would simply take that angle, cut it off on a scratch board, and then use that as a template to trace my angle anywhere I want to on the board. So, cut off the back and cut off the front. I better do that again. There we go. Before I go and cut this, I am going to grab my level and just confirm that these posts are sticking straight up, because that could be disastrous. This system only works if the posts are level. Okay, and this one is out. Here we go. That one's fine. Okay, now I'll show you. Here's my new line. I just drew a new line. I was 1/4 inch off. Always work with it level, and your line trace will be perfect. Now, for good measure, we're going to cut this. We're going to cut this one. We're going to cut one for the other side, just to square off the post so nothing is moving and twisting and leaning for the rest of the build. And then we'll use a special bracket to install it. By cutting it flush, it allows me, when I'm going to put my paneling on, to cover the post, the beam, and the rafter with the exterior siding. That's going to make the secret here, the secret sauce to my build. Now I'm going to install this. I'm going to show you the hardware, because once you've got a clip like this, you'll never go back. So this is just another version of the hurricane bracket. Do they have a special name for it? No? Okay, whatever. Point is it goes on a flat surface to the top of the surface. All right, whoop, like that. And then you can screw through the side and into the cross member and tighten it all together. So we're gonna measure in and install these temporarily just to hold the structure together while we build everything. My roofing comes in next week, and so we'll make that video where we actually install the roof proper. But for now, this is just temporary, so give everything a little bit of strength. And I don't know why, but I'm measuring this off at 16 because I'm just used to it. This is how I roll. All right. Whew. Beauty. All right. Flush to the front. We'll throw some screws in here so it doesn't fall down on my head. I'm only putting in 2 screws for now because this is somewhat temporary. I have metal roofing coming, so I want these boards to land in the bottom of the valleys of the roof. I don't want it on the ribs. That way I don't have to add extra wood for no reason, all right, going perpendicular, just so that I always have a screw surface. I don't mind placing it just so, because wood's expensive these days. Have you noticed? Ay, ay, ay. Over here, this is my center line, that black mark. I'm going up until I make contact with the wood. Okay? You'll notice if I do that all the way up, I've got nothing to screw to. So I'm gonna find a happy place where every one of my holes on this bracket can make contact. And I'm showing you this as a more permanent way to get it done. And then we're gonna go manipulate this beam until it's flush. There we go. Okay, I'll cut one more of these for the other side. All right, so we showed you how to use the hurricane ties to square this all off, right? And we're gonna use them for the middle. So I'm gonna explain my change of plan here. I'm just gonna screw this in place. I have 2 beams. One's pressure treated on the outside, just because I got some pressure treated in the order. Wasn't sure if I was gonna need it or not, or where I might wanna use it. Anyway, because I'm definitely going with the metal roof now, I wanna keep it over here. There's a possibility that the metal roof, where it joins with my 1x6 that's going on the outside, there might be a seal issue. So I want to pressure treat on the outside. If any water got there, it isn't going to destroy it. I'm also going flush on the front, and I'm going to extend out a couple of inches on the back. This is just going to give me a little bit of a protection for the hardware on the door on that side. I figure, what the heck, instead of going flush and flush, might as well extend it inches. Oh, I can't even talk today. Nice and flush here. All right. Okay, so there we are. So now we got the exterior of our skeleton built. We got posts, we got beams, we've got roof ridge. I'm good with this. So I got a door here, I need a column here. I got a door here, I need a column here, and I got a door here. I need another column here. So let's get those 3 locations in next, and then we'll be able to go on to the next stage of this kind of construction, which is to hang all of our horizontal 2x4s. We got special brackets for that as well, which makes it really simple. But first is this.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
Okay. I'm gonna put an entry door here. I don't need it really huge, right? But if I'm going with a 30-inch door, my experience, I need a 34-inch hole for that door, right?
Yep.
Because the jamb on it is 1.25 inches. So if I add 2 inches, I got lots of room. So we'll go to 34. There's my mark. Now everything else is level. I put the front of that there. I need a level on here. Okay, so the bottom stays where it is, and you can move it around until you're happy. I'm just gonna trace it right here.
Oh, sure.
You good with that? Okay, there we go. Now, can you go put that on another 2x4? Run over, and we'll get that same cut twice. And then we'll nail them together and stick it in place. And then we're good to go. I'm gonna go get my brackets. Now for this element, I've got this leftover 4x4 post. So I'm gonna cut it down and use this as my structure. That'll work. All right. And then this will have a door. We're creating like a pantry area for the garden tools. These folks do a little bit of gardening, but you know, they're no green thumb, that's for sure. All right, off you go. Why are you guys so strange?
Green thumb.
You're gonna hear it all the time now that you've heard the expression, you understand.
Heard of a blue thumb.
Can I get the level over here too? So I get to be brutally honest, and you're gonna have the same problem. This post is not perfectly square with the building. So, and it's all my fault, because we're moving too fast. We're trying to film a video. I try to think about all the steps you need to learn. And we knew it was out. We redug the hole, we moved it, but we didn't double check its location. We just built it in. Oh well, these things happen. Can I just get that across the ground? Because it's on a bit of a slope, and I want to just make sure that this is in line, so when I'm all done, it looks normal. Yeah, there we go. So we're going to work off that. And there's my point of 36. Can I get a level on this now? Right here on the ladder, sorry, my bad.
What's the level in here?
Are we close?
Perfect.
Okay, I'm going to put this right into the joist. There we go. Problem solved. How big of a hole do you want? That's the only question. So the design for this thing is kind of all up here. I made a few notes, but basically off this door, I'm putting in a lawnmower. Lawnmowers need almost 5 feet or more, so you can roll it in and there's still room for the handle. So this is pretty huge, and I don't want to waste the space. So I'm going to make this door for here, I'm going to make this one a 32. I'm going to relocate that post here. There we go. To the inside, flush on the outside again for our sheathing. That 32 is at the gap. Good. Measure here now. 33. Same thing, only different, I guess. Yep. Well, since it's in perfectly straight, might as well just leave it like that. Yeah, so the posts and the beams, if you think of it, it's kind of like your skeleton. And the posts that I'm putting in now, they're more like muscles. It's not skeleton, but it makes everything strong, and it's what everything else is going to get attached to eventually. So I'm going to put another door here. This is for the lawnmower. We don't want it to be too wide, right? Because lawnmowers aren't that wide. They're usually about 24, 26 with the wheels. We're going to go to 30. So I'm making a mark on the floor again. I'm going to get the level and a piece of wood, trace the top, double it up, stick it in just like the last time. All right, so this is post and beam construction checklist, because we're ready to move to the next step. We've got our posts, we got our beams, and then we have these posts, which are simply there to facilitate hanging our horizontal pieces, okay? So now I have a doorway here secured, I have a doorway here secured, I got a doorway here secured. We want to fill up the rest of this area with horizontal boards so that we can start sheeting, which is like amazing. So we're going to get into sheeting, and then once I get the back finished and the sides sheeted, we can add our interior wall. This is coming together so quick. I'm telling you right now, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. Save yourself a fortune. Have a little bit of fun too while you're at it. All right, here we go. And you know, if you get in over your head, you can always just join our membership program, right? We have a forum, you can send me pictures and email back and forth, and I can help you troubleshoot on your project too. Cheers. Now remember, one of the goals with anything you build outside is you want it to dry. So make sure you leave air spaces. Doesn't take much of an airspace so things can dry, but you want to make sure that you have a little bit of gap. And use top and bottom screws so that things don't warp. That's it. You keep it dry and you use enough fasteners so nothing ends up warping on you. Oh, hello, darling. Always work so that if the drill slips off the screw, it doesn't go into your hand. Those injuries hurt. I learned that one the hard way a few times. Quite a few times, actually, for whatever reason. What we're going to do is we're going to use screws to put on our sheathing. The sheathing is a 3/4 inch plywood T1-11 siding. It's almost identical to the house, which is 40 years old. It's just a little bit newer version. Probably a different mill. It doesn't need a whole lot of structure, right? I mean, I could literally put one of these horizontals every 2 feet. I don't need any more than that. I don't have to go 16 inch on center. It's just a shed. So here we go. I'm going to mark it off 2 feet. 4 feet. And what I'm marking is the top of my board here. There we go. Piece of cake. Now, and this is what I'm using. This little L bracket. Now when you go down to the structural aisle at the store, you're going to find there's a lot of options for purchasing hardware. And one of the best options, they make these great little brackets for like the end of a fence, because a lot of fences, they'll put horizontal rails and they make a bracket for it. You screw it to the post and you just drop your, they're all out. Big surprise, supply chain woes. So what I'm doing is I'm putting it flush to the outside, and I'm gonna put it down to my line. And instead of resting the 2x4 on top, I'm just gonna stick it from underneath and add the screw. It does the same thing. All right. And then for good measure, I'm also gonna throw one screw on an angle after I'm all done. So it'll all be braced, nothing's gonna twist. At the end of the day, adding this hardware really isn't necessary. I know it's just a shed, but I like to make sure that major components that keep things from falling apart don't fall apart on their own. All right, so we're gonna do that. Bottom rail, pressure treated, and then interior lumber, the other three. We're gonna wrap this thing up, get it somewhat closed, and then we can start on the sheathing. Now, if you've installed everything level, it's like horizontal, you're fine. Just a trick when you're gonna start sheeting, if you just take a marker across the middle, run around the corner and make a mark. So now when the sheet comes all the way to this corner, at least you know the middle line here. They're 4 feet wide. If you always have a reference point, so you're not screwing on an angle, drilling random holes in the wall, that'd be beneficial. Right there, you got it. Here's our product. Not baggish. Okay, so we're gonna go flush off the front. So here's my siding, T111. It comes treated. It's already treated to be an exterior board. So you're not in a rush when you're working with this to get a finish coat of paint or stain on it. So don't freak out about it. It's kind of like OSB, okay? They make this stuff with resin, which is why it's been hard to find the last couple of years. I've actually been trying to track it down at a few different stores, and it wasn't easy to get a hold of. Again, I'm just using my marker, right? And when I'm working like this, I'll just like reference something on my body, so I know I'm hitting my chin is the right height. Here we go. Now that's installed. We'll finish off the rest of the screws in a few minutes, but we're gonna just let it overhang, and we're gonna show a couple of different tricks. We're gonna be able to throw a chalk line on it and cut it afterwards, and on the other side we're gonna cut it in advance, and then you can decide what do you think is easier. I'm kind of a cut it off afterwards kind of guy, but I'm also crazy. Matt, just run right off the high side into the groove. If it's a little short, it doesn't matter because we're capping the ends. All right? So just run that groove. And let's get as much of it as close to the sawhorses as possible. You don't waste anything. Right, we're gonna pre-cut this and then the next board as well. Everything's gonna get cut at 81 and that'll be perfect. All right, Matt? Okay, so the trick here is get all your siding on, and then from the back side, we'll drill holes in the corners, and then we'll cut the door out and then go from there. So I might just finish cutting my next panel over the back corner. I got the measurement for the cutoff, and it comes to here. I'm just gonna drop my level on this and then pinch, compress where the mark is so that that becomes the lever point, and I'm gonna set my bubble level right there. All right. So now I can get this measurement and then give it to Matt, and he can cut the angle. We're gonna go a little shy because we're trimming it anyway. Go to 90. Okay, that's the stuff right there. Okay, and then that's plenty. Now watch this. We're gonna cheat a half an inch here and cheat a half an inch there because we're capping the edges. Yes, sir. Okay, so in my mind, I knew that this post plus the beam plus the 2x4s ends up at 86 inches. Bam. Kind of was aiming for that from the beginning. I wanted to get within an inch of it one way or another. So that works out really well. So it's just a full sheet. So now we're just taking the last sheet, going to cover up this hole. We're going to cut the top off in advance. And then we're going to be able to frame in for our door. cut out the extra panel and use that panel to become one of these sliding barn doors. And we've got another panel set aside for the other barn door. And that'll be good, because this is going to be a man door. I'm going to just get something from off the shelf at the depot or something, right? With something with a window in it. And that'll be fine. Right? And good? All right, so now you can start to see this coming together. We got our master plan, right? This is going to be a factory door. So whatever I cut out from here, it's the widest door. I can use this as the hanging barn door to cover one of these two spaces. This is the narrowest, so I'll most likely throw it over here. That way I'm going to have a hole that's 30 inches wide, and I can have a 33-inch or 34-inch door from that barn door size. Even if I cut that out and then I add a little backing to it, like some 2x2, and then I cap it in cedar just to make it look pretty, it'll be a really nice looking door. And then it'll give us me a nice closure on the outside as well, okay? This one I'm just gonna cut out right now, just so I have access to the rest of this, so I can keep working. If I start putting up the last wall, I don't have a door yet, I'm in trouble. So we're gonna give this a quick rip. And I'm gonna save this until later. I don't have all the tools that I need with me today to be drilling and cutting, and so we'll save that for a little later in the video. The day is coming to an end. Today our goal is to get our interior wall in, get the garden shed area here framed up, and then throw a couple of boards across here and get some skin on. I've got some pressure treated plywood we're gonna use for the interior wall. Nice and simple. And then I can throw on my ledge, because I'm getting a slab, as like a piece of tree for my countertop. It's gonna be on brackets, so it'll flip off. We can close the awning, open the awning, and it'll just roll over. It'll be 2 inches thick. We want to set our rail here at 34 inches, so our finished height is 36, which will be standard for stools that will go with this bar afterwards. And then once I've got that on, then we can start sheeting the outside, keeping all of our leftover scraps in mind so that we can have the awning built custom out of the same material that was cut here, so all the lines work. This is good. Do the math, one step at a time. You don't want to get too far ahead of yourself, like I tend to do. So here we are. I'm going to cut this out, make sure I gain access, and I'll just keep working away here for a little bit. I got about another hour or so. I'll get some more work done. Go team. But she's feeling really solid here. Now that it's all skinned, right? Like, that's pretty darn good. I'm happy with that. By the time I get the front of this framed, it's going to be a pretty solid structure. And yeah. What else you want in life, eh? Time for an update. Okay. All right. In behind here is now the garden area for all the tools. We just got to put plywood on this wall. And we'll do it from the front side, inside, later. That way they have a solid surface to mount anything they want to put in, shelves or brackets for hanging rakes and stuff. But that'll be all isolated off to that back door. Then here, that's going to open up. That'll be where the lawnmower comes in. We're putting a shelf across that so we can pull out all the cushions for the outdoor furniture in here. And then we've left this exposed. I'm thinking of doing some really cool shelving. Put glasses and pictures or whatever, right? Now we got to frame our knee wall, frame in our sides, and build the frame for our awning and the bar. It kind of makes sense now, I think. I think it's making sense. I'm feeling good about it. Here's how this works. This is gonna become a door. You walk in, and we're gonna have a bar counter slab from a tree here on brackets that fold up and down. So then we'll just fold it into place after we open the awning. So we're gonna create some supports for the awning. It'll be a gas lift, holds 100 pounds each side. And then you'll have shade to sit here with bar stools. We're gonna go 40 inches high, plus the counter. get some 30-inch bar stools. It'll be comfortable, and it's fine. It doesn't matter if you're using nails or screws when you're building. It depends on your tools. If you have a nailer and you're comfortable nailing things together because you're not gonna have to take them apart and cut them second time, like sometimes in the afternoon, I only use screws because I always screw up. And right, my measurements are horrible after I get lunch. All the blood leaves my head and goes into my stomach. I guess it's just a mess. Matt has to save my bacon all day long. But for this, we're just gonna nail it together real quick. Stick this in place, visualize what it looks like finished, I think. And then we can all have a chat with the homeowners about the height and functionality, and we can make adjustments if we have to. But.
Let's do it.
So, remember we had two different options for attaching this panel, is what, put it up and then cut it, or cut it and then install it. This is fast as far as getting progress made, but it is a real pain in the butt when it comes time to actually cut, right? So now I gotta put it here on the unstable ground with a chalk line. Back to here. Really got a lot more out there than I needed. I'm aiming for about a ½ an inch below the top of the 2x4 there. Now I'm gonna set the wheel on my skill saw. This is a 3/4 inch ply product. So I'll set the skill saw for 1 inch deep, and I'm gonna put a little score mark in that 2x4, and I don't care. I just wanna guarantee that I get it all the first time. All right, here we go. We're gonna cut this in 2 sections because I'm not gonna reach out and be able to start there. And this is a relatively heavy saw, so we'll just get her done here. There we go, perfect. Today's video, guys, I'm installing this metal roof for my 10x10 shed. Listen, here's the bottom line. It costs about $500 today's material, but it's a 50-year roof with almost zero maintenance, and it only took me a half a day to get this installed. I did run into a few problems, so I'm gonna share all that information with you in today's video. So we've got to put in some beams and some metal sheeting. Going with real traditional sheet metal good today. It's very flexible and easy to work with. We're gonna show you all the tips and tricks. And one more thing, when you go to order that stuff, make sure you order it from a local source because you can get it delivered within a week. These are in the wrong place. This is just temporary till we got our sheathing on. We're gonna remove them and relocate. The bit that comes in the box for your structural screws is exactly the same bit as it takes to install the screws for your sheet metal. So you don't have to go out and buy any new hardware. First of all, before we get started, it's important to know you want this material on site before you frame your roof. The goal here, and I'm just gonna walk you through the basic building process. The sheet metal is gonna start on one side. We're gonna have it sitting right on the edge of our roof, and then I'm gonna cap it with a 1x6 in cedar. You're gonna wanna have one rafter every 2 ribs, all right? We're gonna go full length. We're not gonna cross beam. Wood's too expensive for that nonsense right now. So we're just gonna put in 1 rib for every 2 joints, and then every piece is gonna overlap a second joint, okay? So when we screw it together, it'll be going through 2 pieces. That's the basic concept. It comes 12 feet long. I was gonna get it custom ordered, but I didn't really have the measurement when I ordered it, so I got the whole bloody thing. So I'm gonna change out my skill saw to this 7 1/4. Thanks, Matt. And we're just gonna cut it all once at the same time, once I finally get my measurement done. But right now what I wanna do is I just wanna get my measurement from here to here to here, get the first 3 pieces lined up, get up on the ladder, get that all established, get this cut, and then we'll just assemble it. You're gonna love it. I got a system here that allows us to have no need to cut the front angle on an angle, okay? We're gonna build it special to keep the water out. We're gonna get it sealed up with some polyurethane. This is a pretty simple build. We should get this done probably in the next 30 minutes. What I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna set this cut off the plywood here with my clamps for 2 reasons. It is really hard when you're cutting metal straight up and down these grooves to keep it straight. And when you start going all over the place, you end up with a huge bloody mess. There we go. So when I put my saw guard with my black mark on it where I cut, I can actually have that right at the edge. This little foot goes right on the edge of my plywood, and then I cut that straight. The other thing this does is allows me to put my weight on it. This plywood actually transfers weight to every one of these ribs. So Now I can stand on my cutting material. All right? So I can stand over top of it and I don't have to be reaching and doing weird things. That's all there is to it. Now, I'm gonna be cutting a total thickness. I got a 2x4 underneath here, so I got lots of room. Now I'm gonna measure my thickness, 1.5 inches. Want to set my wheel just about 1.75 inches. A little deeper than what I need, but whenever you're cutting through metal, you are going to create a lot of heat. If my wheel is just penetrating the steel, that's great. If I have it going 1.5 inches past, then there's a whole lot more of this wheel that's rubbing up against the metal surface and overheating. Here goes everything. Perfect every time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut pressure treated 5/4 board, which is actually 1 inch thick. I know it's weird our world, but I'm going to laminate the outside of the shed, and I'm going to follow the same angle cut that we have. I kept my template, all right, and I'm going to translate that angle top and bottom. I'm going to draw it out, and then I'm going to cut this board in half using my skill saw. I'm going to show you that technique as well. And then I'm going to cut the rest of these rafters. And we're going to measure off the gapping that we need from one rib to the next on my header. And then put up these brackets. And then we will just drop in all of the 2x4s that we need to support it. Nice and simple. What I'm going to do with this though, because this is going to be going on the outside of the building, it's on the outside of the skin, I'm going to cut it to install it, cut some kerf lines, some relief cuts in it. That way, if any of the water gets past all my defenses that I'm going to be building in this system, it can escape on the outside of the building and not have to dry into the building. Make sense? If you're going to build something for 50 years, you better think about what about on those really, really windy days, or if somebody forgets to check the caulking joint up there 10, 20 years from now. You know, what's the lifespan of this thing? Again, it's the same size as my rafters, which were 91 1/4. So there's my quarter mark, and here is my angle, and this can be just a hair shorter, so this is not going to be visible from the outside. We're going to cap it all later, so I know this is one of those things, it's like, what the hell is he doing? When I go to assemble it all, it'll all make sense, okay? But I've got to do a lot of preparation before we do the assembly, so we're going to do a French table saw today, which basically is an on-site way to use your skill saw to rip materials down. And all we do, screw it down, about 30% of the meat on your surface. This board is 5.5, which means 2 1/4 is where I want to be. This plate's 1.5, 2 1/4, here's 2 1/4. From the cutting lines at 2 1/4. I'm going to pull this back, I'm going to set my blade in the middle, I'm going to put my finger right here. See that? Stop telling me this is dangerous. I'm nowhere near the blade. There, twice as much material now. Who needs a table saw? So, before I can install this board, remember I told you I needed relief cuts. I don't want them very thick though. I mean like just 1/4 inch or so. Enough so that water can drain if I get bulk water trapped in behind that. And we're just going to run it, watch out for your screws, just run a cut every 6 inches or so. There, that's good enough. Now, I'm going to put one in the middle. Let's go hang the sucker. And I am vertically challenged, so I will be using a ladder for this. So, when I bring my roof material to this edge, okay, right here, after that, I'm going to cap this with a cedar. It's a 1x6, high and low, all right? And that gives me a a surface where the metal's made contact with the wood that I can put my exterior sealant on it. But if the sealant fails, these relief cuts give an opportunity for the water to exit outside of the shed. And then if that fails and it crawls underneath, there's still relief cuts in the siding on the outside. We just want to make sure that if water gets in behind here and doesn't get the right regular maintenance, that this roof is going to last 50 years no matter what. So a little bit of thought goes a long way here, including the fact that I do not have a magnetic bit. All right. Now we've got a point to measure from. We can run along and mark all of the rib lines of our metal roof. I've decided that since there's a new rib every 9 inches, my only option is to either go every 9 or every 18. Now, if I go every 18, it's most likely going to just be fine, but that offers a little bit too much deflection in the wintertime, and I don't want to risk my sealant coming loose. So I'm going to put a 2x4 every 9 inches across this top here. It's going to seem like overkill, but the only other option is to put them every 16 and then wood on top of that going horizontally. So that's just too much wood. We'll keep it simple today. All right, so here's the simplicity of this. We have the first few inches is all wood, okay? And that's going to get screwed on right here. Then from that location, I want to have a screw here and here and here. Make sense? Right? So everything is nicely supported. So what I got to do is I got to get the first location, which is different than everything else. First one is going to go at 11.5. All right? And then every other location after that will be 9 inches on center. All right? That should make that a little easier to understand. Now you know what I'm doing. I got to go put that information up top. This is the center of my first one. And then at 9 inches is the next one, 18 inches is the next one, and that continues. All right? Make sense? Now these are only 3 feet wide, each panel, right? So 3 feet and change, I believe, is what that is. Here's my problem. These panels are 3 feet wide. So in a perfect world, you've got lumber going this way and then this way. And so then you can screw in on that horizontal anywhere you want to keep everything nice and tight. We're saving ourselves a little material and a little buildup, and we're just gonna go one direction. So I gotta measure from the outside, which I've established now, to, I want my last stud, we'll call it a rafter. I want my last rafter right here. I'm gonna go that section of the panel. Now they're 9 inches apart, so my first one is actually, I'm gonna go 8.5 here. And then every 9 inches after that. All right, I originally was just gonna go with this panel, but you can see I'd have this huge dangling piece in the ceiling, and I don't wanna have that ugliness, so we're gonna go this way. I gotta change my measurements. Okay, so that's 8.5. That's still 4 3/4, that hasn't changed. 1/4, so here's my new line. Well, I marked all that up for nothing then, didn't I? Okay. Now, 3 feet goes to there. Good, that makes more sense. Do the same thing on the other end. 4 1/4. Just there. There. Oh, that seems a little more dangerous than it needs to be. I'm just gonna set them, and then as I screw them in place, I'll move them over. So I'm gonna go in reverse. I'm gonna start like this straight, then I go in reverse, and then I burn the angle that I want, then I drive forward. We're gonna do that again, just so you can see that, because this is a nice trick. Okay, that never slips out that way. Now we'll go forward. Whoop. Here we are. Because we're putting on metal, we need to have wood solid away across to close all these gaps off. So I got to cut a series of blocks that go in that gap, so that when we set the metal on, we actually have a foam gasket that we can stuff in there as well to keep the bugs from hibernating and growing and doing what bugs do in the spring inside the roof, right? We don't want to encourage them to live in our roof. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to put this bracket up, screw it in from the side first. Now the reason I'm using this particular hardware is, again, it's just in a few locations. It really holds this thing together so that there isn't any incredible amount of stress put on all the screws holding the rafters in. 3 brackets on each wall is more than enough structural support to keep this from toppling over. It's overkill, and I don't mind a little overkill, especially when you want something to last for a while. Okay. And then you're ready to drive it. It never splits, it never falls out. It's perfect every time. Ready for the first piece of sheet metal. So here we go, we got this lined up. Just wanted to demonstrate, you can see that I'm gonna be right beside the mount, right beside the ribs when I put my screw lines in, okay? And that's gonna work great. I'm gonna come up flush to the edge, make sure I'm somewhat square. I'm gonna get my first one right in here just so we can pivot and twist if we need to. You'll notice that there's also the same colored washer, okay, that comes with the screw. If you've never worked with this material before, the guy that supplies the screws, comes all together. Okay, and you can get as much compression there as you want. There we go. Now that's not going anywhere, right? We just want to make sure it's nice and square. When you're working with sheet metal, best to be smart. Just want to make sure that I'll be able to lean across and get all of these screws in. And try to keep them in a straight line so you don't want this looking like hell to the neighbors. They're so kind, they never cut the grass when we're out here filming, so we'll make sure it looks good for them too. All right. Okay. Make sure I flatten that washer out real good. There we go. Okay. Whew. Now, I'm basically going to put, basically every 2 feet, I'm going to put a row of screws, okay? And I'm going to just continue doing this and sticking this all on. Do a little time lapse here. When we come back, we're going to show you how to cap all of your edges and seal this up. So the trick here with cutting sheet metal or aluminum is the same thing. You score it with your knife, then you fold it back over on the score. The more you flatten it, the easier it is to break when it comes back the other way. That's nice. And then you simply bend it back the other way and it tears right off. Yeah. 15. Okay, so now we got the roof basically on. Yay. We have to finish skinning the rest of the building. My entire design revolves around the idea of having a piece of pressure treated as a perimeter board and then a cedar board over top of that that's twice as big that goes above and beneath both of those surfaces. So when you look at the shed, your overhang is almost non-existent, but it's kind of a sharp look. The cedar is going to be raised off the surface, and then that gives me the ability to cap it all. All right, so what I did, guys, is I just tacked up a block at the other end. I'm going to put the face on last, but I need to have an end stop there. So I'm going to be dropping in this piece of cedar here. I'm 2 inches off. There we go. All right. And I'm just screwing right into the existing pressure treated lumber. And now the finishing touch. We're going to throw on our exterior sealant. Yep, got a hole. This is colored. Now, if you're not sure where to find this stuff, pretty sure I got this at the Home Depot here in Canada. They're going to have an exterior caulking. You want something that is rated for exterior doors and windows. It's got like 1400% stretchability. Good to see a wasp around here. Always makes me comfortable. And basically the idea here is we're going to bridge the gap from the wood to the metal. So during the hot and cold, because metal does have expansion and contraction, this is going to perform and keep that seal up. Once we've trimmed all 3 sides, we're basically done here. So let me just show you real quick. This is not the time to be cheap. There we go. Okay, now that's a decent bead of caulking, right? Check this out. You don't want to go down there when you're done and use your finger to cut to make that clean. That's not very healthy. So what we're going to do is I'm going to cut this off much more aggressively, a much wider bead. Okay? Now, this is how you want to caulk. You want to have the tube pressed up against your material, and then it does all the leveling for you. All right? That gets you a great look, a nice wide seal. I'm at least a 1/4 inch or more on each side of that material off the gap. You just got to maintain pressure and run it up there. Now you don't need to use your fingers and risk slicing your hand open. This is not a race. This particular moment here, this is about perfection. This is the difference between 50 or 25 years. We've got a lawnmower area behind us. We've got a garden shed, both with their own access doors. But today we're going to turn this into a backyard entertainment paradise. All right, now let's just jump into this. We got some pretty serious hardware. We're going to go with some gate hardware to hang our awning, all right, so that it can lift up. That'll be awesome. And really the key here is to know the end from the beginning. So the top is overhanging. The back here is recessed and flush with the wall. So whatever we build here, we want to have it flush, and then we're going to cap it with some of this trimming that you see on the corner. It's pretty basic, pretty simple. The truth is, had I planned ahead, I would have just put the full sheet of skin on and then cut it to fit after I was done building the frame. I wasn't thinking, so now I'm doing it backwards. But if you do have a shed, you could just add a little structural support to your wall and then just cut right through the whole thing, open it up like a picture, slap on a couple of hinges, and off you go to the races. Now, woo, here we go. I'm short. I'm gonna need a ladder for this. So the goal here, guys, is to use some really good hardware. That's actually gonna function better for us. So just go through the plan. This lumber here is 1 inch thick. It's not the structure I wanna attach to. So I've got these fence gates, and I've got these amazing structural bolts that are probably going to be too big for my damn hardware. I'll drill them out. That won't be pretty. We're going to attach some 1/2 inch material right here so my awning can swing to 105 degrees. All right? The front of that bracket is going to get attached to this. This is 3/4 inch plywood. And where these screws come through on the back side, I'm going to put a piece of the 5/4 inch cedar just to help eat up the meat on that screw and give me a little bit of stability, like a rail. And then we're going to add the gas lift to the side, and this should open that up without too much difficulty. We're going to do a little bit of fussing around to get this to work right. Like I said earlier, if you're thinking about doing this, leave the skin on, cut the top and the side, put all your brackets and hardware on, and then cut the bottom loose. It would have been a lot easier. We're gonna do something crazy and take a chance that we can drill this bigger. Got it. Now we got the ability to mount that hardware, right? Yeah. All right. Okay, so when you're doing something crazy like this, you got to consider, you know, how you're going to be attached, how much ledge you can get, the elevation. We're way over 105 degrees here, so that's good. Where your hardware is going to go so that you overlap your surface for weatherproofing, right? And if I'm flat against the surface now, it pulls away as it opens, all right? And because I'm adding that 1/2 inch across the top, this actually gives my material enough that it'll cover the bottom as well, okay? every situation is going to be different. But the key here is to understand that you need clearance for mobility. You need overhang to keep the weather out. And since I'm going to be lifting a whole lot of weight, we're going to want to build this door. I'm going to put a piece of wood across here to hold the weight, set it in place with the hardware attached to the top. And then I'm going to come back inside and I'm going to screw it up. Now I've had to add a 2x4 to the back here to line up with the second hole, but it's right into the 2x10. It's structural now, okay? And we're going to add those 2 points, get this thing hanging in place, and then we'll finagle a little bit to trim it off and square it off. That'll be fine. All right? At the end of the day, lining this up so that our panels cover here and line up with the grooves is the biggest element. If you can get all your grooves lined up, you're going to be a rock star, okay? So we're not going to worry too much about the location of the hinge. We're just going to get it on the plywood. We'll get this up, move it into position, and then we'll attach it. And then instant awning. Okay? Nailed it.
Nailed it.
$48.5. Okay? $48.5. Now one of these has got a bad warp to it, right? Okay. Okay. All right. Ready? Keep it going. Got it. And the other side now. There we go. Now what we gotta do is we gotta put some cross bracing on here. But it has to be higher than the countertop. All right, Matt, let's go with a 95. Yeah, and then we'll just do a couple of filler strips after that. 39s. Okay, Matt, come on over here, bud. I'm gonna show you what I want you to do. All right, so here's the deal. I want you to stand here like this.
Yeah.
Hold that right there. And I'm gonna put a screw at the top, and one in the middle, and one in the bottom. Okay? Like exactly, top, middle, and bottom. So you can hold it there, and here is fine. This will not come all the way through. I don't think. Okay? It's the only place that I... Okay. Thank you. Next seam, split it right down the middle. Right to the top, please. Thank you. Go like that. Can you like start there and just, you're the clamp? Okay. I'm gonna put one. That is the damn awning. Right? Woo! All we need now is a couple of gas lifts. I think we're just gonna lift this up and then set it on these. Okay, we'll see how it works. That'll take all the pressure off the screws. There you go. That's just for now, okay? So now we got a functional awning. Great, now it's raining, so Max can stand underneath the awning while I install the bar top. So here's how we're gonna do this. We've got some brackets. These are really cool, actually. This gets mounted on a wall, and it's release and fold system, okay? So while this is hanging on the wall, I can have my bar top attached to it, and it just lifts right up. All right, so my goal is to get this installed as flush to this exterior surface as I can, level across all 4 brackets that I have, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop some screws along the front, and I'm going to drive them down and adjust them all to the wood itself, because it's not going to be perfectly flat. It is a piece of a tree that's been cut. So once we get the brackets all level, we'll install the wood, we'll drop it over, we'll install some spaces for it to sit so it stays level, and then we're good. So that's actually my high side. And you know, the truth is, because I'm using 4 brackets on a long, thin piece of wood, it'll all adjust over time, and it would just sit fine. But I'm a stickler for getting things perfect every time. So we're gonna go ahead and make it perfect. This is the high side. I have more lip here, but that's the high side. So I'm gonna do everything based off of that end. Gonna mount my wall bracket first. What I should be doing before I do that, I wish I had my torpedo level on me, Max. That might be helpful. But if you don't have a torpedo level, a 5-foot one will do just fine. I am definitely leaning towards me. I'm 1/8 of an inch higher on the front. Okay. Now the reason you want a bar top level is because if you're serving drinks, you don't want them to fall over. Obviously. Here we go. This is the easiest thing I've done in 3 days. We've been building this shed all week. Oh, it's nice to have a simple project again. Right, so lever, it gets past the little mechanism, the bar falls down. To lift it up, okay, because it's actually, you don't need to use the lever to lift it, okay? I'm just gonna grab the wood and lift it. So you'll see when we're finished. Now that's in position, we're gonna open it up, grab the next one. All right, this is where this gets fun. So I'm going to put it on my level and raise it until it's level. Loving that. Yeah, now it's all perfectly level. It's an easy install. The secret here is when you're putting in a screw and there's room, make sure you're putting it in at the top of the bracket, because you don't want to put in a screw and then have it sink under the weight. There we go, top of the hole. Because I'm thinking about the overhang and people putting weight on it, and I need to have enough screws in this wood, there's enough resistance that it doesn't pull off the screws. Next up, I'm going to bring in the countertop, get it attached, and then we'll worry about level last. This is a piece of walnut, local wood store called the Wood Source, and they actually sell slabs that are in thin, like a 4/4 version, so you don't have to get a 300-pound slab. So for this scenario, it's perfect because I didn't want to overdo the hardware. I bought them off Amazon thinking, this is great, I'll use something from Amazon, and then when it got in, I was like, well, that seems a little light duty. So popped down to Wood Source and they had a solution to my problem. That was 4/4 board. Awesome. So I want to pre-drill the 3/4 of an inch. So I lay that on my bit, and then I lay my tape on my bit, which is going to be too wide. There we go. And I make sure that I tape the sides together, nice and level, flush, even, beautiful. So as I'm drilling, I have a flag. And when it touches the material on the bottom, that's as deep as I want to go. And it's really that simple. Now, I also want as much overhang as I can get without risking being too close. I like that. Yeah, it's right on the edge. Good. Here we go. Yep, and I'm paranoid. I don't like the way that the flag is bending inside that frame. I'm gonna double check the width here. Sorry, let's go on the inches side. Okay, we're still at 3/4, we're good. So, I think before we go any further, let's put the first screw in so it's not gonna slide off by accident. Okay? Done. And no raised surface. That's perfect. All right, now we'll just do that a whole bunch of times. And if anybody's interested, yep. That one's gone forever. The cost of this countertop was $267 Canadian, and it was a 10-foot piece. And it had a little bit of damage on it, as you can see on the edge. But I was able to just take my saw and cut off some of the rough parts and then sand it smooth. Took no time at all. It's pretty functional to get an 8-foot countertop for a couple $100. Like, where can you get an 8-foot countertop for $200? You can't even get that in Formica. Now I get sturdy and sexy all at the same time. Nice. All right. Yeah, I can't do this with 4 brackets. There's just no way. Yeah, and at the same time, like, it doesn't need all that bloody hardware in there, does it? Like, if it's not going to function clean, this is part of the problem. It's a pretty precise. I don't think it's designed to be with four brackets. That's what it was. That mechanism was blocking it. We were having an issue because I was too flush. This locking mechanism wasn't working right. So I'm actually going to install about 1/8 of an inch above where I was, just to guarantee that locking mechanism works. I took the extra 2 brackets off. It seemed to be not necessary. And the finicky nature of this mechanism, from 89 to 90 degrees open, nothing functioned. It didn't lock, it didn't open, it wasn't moving. It had to get to an actual 90, maybe 91. So now, right, it's engaged. So here we go. I can get that one going. And now it opens fully in position, which is what I was looking for. I am much happier about that. And I'm thinking even trying 3 of these things, it's not gonna work. So I'm glad I went with the 4/4 board so it's not too heavy. Now it's locked in position. So it's actually locked on an angle. Huh. So the solution to my problem is to put in positive stops so that it sits flat. I'm only guessing what that is. So now that it sits open, I don't have to release the locks to move. Okay, that's not enough. Wow, that looks a lot closer to level. And it's not locking, okay? So it's easy to open up to close up the bar. Okay, perfect. I'm just gonna add a few more screw locations. Now, for the final coat, we're using this. And these cans are really tiny, but I got an extra can. It's easier to work out of. I'm using foam brushes, right? Buy them in a bag, use it and throw it away. You don't want to use a lot of pressure with this product or these brushes. Just get it wet and push it around. I would prefer in an outdoor project using 3 coats versus 2. And so for that reason, I don't even sand after the first coat. Okay, you just want to get it. First coat kind of soaks in, second coat fills in most of the gaps and cracks. But then when you want to sand this thing, you want to use steel wool, okay? And when you go buy steel wool for sanding, it comes in 6 different grades. For really good finishing like this, you want somebody to sit down at your bar in the backyard, put their hands on that and go, damn. You want to use 4-0 steel wool. It's so fine, it'll just make it like glass. And that's what we're gonna do, all right? Oh, here we go. What we're gonna be looking at is, instead of doing the cut and roll like you do in interior jobs, we're gonna do this in reverse. because this is a very rough surface, right? So we're not gonna brush first, we're gonna actually roll first. That'll determine how much brush work needs to be done. We're gonna keep the brush handy and wet so that if we have any drips, we can catch them as we go, all right? Next tip I got for you is get some exterior super grade caulking, okay? Find something that's kind of in the same color if you can, but here's why. You're gonna just take advantage of the fact that this stuff is paintable within just a few minutes, all right? And you go around and you can fill up holes, all right? Boom. Doesn't have to be perfect, a little pressure and a quick wipe, and you're good, all right? That's how you can get rid of screw holes, imperfections, areas where water can penetrate your surface and cause you issues early on, right? Next step, grab yourself some good gear, Wooster cage and roller, adjustable handle, all right? And I'm gonna start off with a 15mm sleeve. We're gonna see how well it works, just as a little science experiment. I also brought a 31mm, all right? It's super huge, and if we need to, we'll go there. I just hesitate using something that can carry that much paint because I don't want to become a real sloppy painter here. I like to walk away as clean as I can get. To load it up from dry, it takes a bit. You're gonna want to hit this roll 20, 30 times. Okay? Next key is try to stay in the shade. If you don't have shade, make some, because the direct sun in your paint is going to make it skin over so fast and it'll be an absolute disaster. Now, let's just try this out and see what kind of coverage we get. I'm not using any pressure at the moment. I'm just rolling it on. Okay? And now I'm gonna use some pressure. Wow. And if you're not watching the video series and you're wondering why is this moving, this is my awning, okay? And behind that is a bar. And that was in a video we did yesterday. Check the link for the video description. It's a whole series you're gonna wanna watch. Here we go. Yeah, we're gonna call this a fail because I can't get good coverage in between. All right? All right, yeah, that's just not happening. Let's use the paint that's in here. Yeah, when I start pushing too hard, it starts flying all over the place and I'm gonna become a mess. All right, so we're not gonna use this. I'm just gonna go throw this in the garbage. Wow, here comes a 31. Now, this ought to work. Let's give this a try and see what the difference is like. Okay, that's just ridiculous, right? Like, do you remember Star Trek, Max? What were those things called? The Tribble or something? Little furry creatures that like took over the starship and everybody thought they were cute, but they're actually a menace. That's what this reminds me of. I just can't remember the name. My God, that goes back. That takes me back to my early 1970s. If anybody remembers what they're called, I'd love to hear in the comment section. Okay. Like, so that really works, right? I think what we're gonna find here is that even though that works, I'm gonna have to still work the angle in there. Oh my goodness, that is a serious fuzzy mess. Okay, still not getting all my grooves, all right? Now, any paint application, you're gonna want 2 coats. This is your opportunity to find out what you should be brushing first and then rolling for the second coat so that you don't have brush lines everywhere. Now I know I'm gonna have to brush all this. That's maddening, but that's fine, right? Fine, if I gotta brush it, I gotta brush it. But at least I know for my second coat, I'll brush it first and then roll right away so I don't have any brush lines on my finished product. Thank you for that. Love filming outside. There's no air conditioning. Someone's always cutting their grass or buzzing the tower with a flyby. There, Lord, here we go. Oh, okay. I just took some of that in the eye. Here we go. And the only reason we're doing 2 coats is to guarantee that we get the coverage, right? Like the second coat, I think I'm gonna go in a different direction, believe it or not. Just because there's so much texture, but it'll allow me better performance out of it for sure. What do you think of the color altogether? It's kind of a putty, gray, taupey look, eh? Oh. The harder I push, the more paint flies off, that's for darn sure. If I just relax and go slow, it's nice and clean. We did a shed video at Max's house previously. It's over 10 million views now, which is incredible. I really didn't know that there were that many people out there wanting to know how to build a shed, but Max, you painted that. How easy was that siding compared to this one?
It was pretty easy.
It was not as much, it wasn't as rough, was it?
No, but it still took about a day.
Yeah.
I really get it.
Yeah.
2 coats.
Funny thing is, you know, this is the same siding that's on this person's house, so we matched it up. I couldn't even find the other siding in stock. Supply chain drives you crazy these days. Everything's always shorted. So here's a funny fact. I'll let you guys in on a little secret. I was talking to a friend of mine who manages a paint store here in town. And I bumped into him at a Home Depot, and he was telling me that, I was asking him, so what's it like for the paint products on the market now? Because, you know, it's been a while since we had the Texas problem, and it affected a lot of paint supply. And so he was telling me that the suppliers are still claiming force majeure for all of their contractors, which basically means they can't be held responsible for their inability to meet their supply. So if you order 10,000 units or something and they send you 2, there's no apologies. They're not breaking any contractual obligation. So they're really playing a dance out there to who they're trying to keep happy. Which is why in a lot of cases, the box stores aren't getting first crack at the products on the market. So if there's a shortage at the box store, it's because new housing construction is a bigger contract right now. And those guys are getting the materials before the Home Depot does. Absolutely fascinating. You know what else is fascinating, Max? This gallon of paint isn't going nowhere. It's getting eaten up real quick. Wow. I'm gonna need 3 gallons for this shed. Wow. Another secret to doing this kind of job, guys, is make sure that all of your exterior caulking is done the day before. You want it all nice and dry and cure, okay? Nothing worse than trying to paint wet caulking. I know you're not all gonna buy the really expensive kind, so if you don't, make sure you read your label. Some of these products are 24 hours before you can paint. Be careful. All right, so now I'm done with this. It's super hot, I gotta brush the rest. I gotta go find a bag that I can put this in so it doesn't dry out. Okay, so same process for brushing. You want to fill it up. My paint's to here. I'm pounding the brush in there, fill it up full of paint until it looks like that. All right, then you're good to go. Now, you want to start the highest and furthest point away, always working back to where you're not going to be leaning in the paint and getting nasty, right? If I start from the bottom up, then I'm going to be leaning over wet paint to get to this ledge back here. This is a metal roof that I installed a piece of pressure treated lumber on top of and screwed into it. I created an L package here, and it's also sealed up underneath that. The focus of this is to try to create a waterproof system for inside the shed in all 4 seasons of our climate. Now, the difference between paint and stain. And this is really, really key. When you're picking your products, because you're not sure if you want to go paint or stain, if you've got options, then you got to understand the products. Out there on the market right now, we have exterior paint, which sits on the surface like a skin, okay? And good paint technology has UV protection, and you can get, 10, 15 years out of it, all right? But when it fails, generally speaking, because it doesn't absorb into the wood it sits on top, it fails by peeling. And so peeling and blistering and that sort of thing means that you got to go up there and sand it back or scrape it back and then paint all over again. And that can be maddening. If you have a surface like a deck, you have 2 options. You got oil or water-based stains. Oil stains, for the most part, are very durable and have good UV protection if you buy it in 2 parts and you mix colorant. And you can get a pretty clear stain that has UV protection for about 5 years on flat surfaces. But most oils skin as well. So what we're using, instead of using an oil-based product, we're using a water-based product. It's new technology from C2. And it's a penetrating sealer with a UV protection. That's water-based. And that product actually allows us to put 2 coats on within 5 minutes, right? It's good to walk on in 3 hours, and it'll last 5 or so years on a horizontal surface like a deck. And then if it starts to fade, All you do is paint it on again. There's no prep, none, which is amazing. So every 5 years you spend half an hour rolling your product on your deck again, you're good to go. So, good to consider. I know a lot of the products that are on the market for covering exterior wood are semi-transparent or transparent stain or solid stain. All of those products do the same thing. They all skin on top, they don't penetrate, and so they're all gonna have the same fail rate, which means every few years you get to go back to the hardware store, buy the same product in frustration, and spend a good couple of weeks sanding and prepping your deck area again, which kind of defeats the purpose of enjoying your outdoor space, especially in Canada, when our summer is only 10 weeks long. Don't want to spend half of my summer scraping and grinding and scratching and sanding. God, do yourself a favor, spend good money on a good product, and then you won't have to spend as much time and energy constantly fixing up that mess. Now I'm done. The back side, we'll do the front. All right, one more tip for you. Because we're dealing with such a rough surface, we're gonna have to beat the devil out of it. You're gonna lose a brush, guaranteed. Maybe go through 2 brushes on one job. So don't go buying a $40 paintbrush. This is the time to buy like a $7 to $10 paintbrush. All right, and we're literally dabbing it like this, forcing the paint with the bristles into all of those textured grooves, okay? And then we're gonna use whatever's left there to paint our smooth surfaces next to it. All right, that'll give you pretty decent coverage. And it's a workout. You might even want to switch hands as you go through the day. Oh, that's a lot of pounding away just to get 1 or 2 feet of trim edged up. You're too close to the robin's nest. It's giving you hell. Did you know? Did you notice that? Started squawking as soon as you moved back inside there. Did that to me yesterday when I was cleaning up. Jenna came up to take a look. We walked around the corner. That bird started freaking out. So the reason we're going through so much paint here is this texture is so rich and deep. It's like doubling the surface area that we have to cover in paint, right? So instead of this just being a 10 by 8, it's like a 10 by 16. That's a huge. So if 1 gallon does 300 square feet on a rough surface like this, it's gonna do 100, maybe 150. Now the second coat won't use as much because it'll be all sealed up. But this first coat, man, it is just eating this gallon of paint. Wow, if I get this 10 by 8 shed surface, this one wall done with this 1 gallon, it'll be a miracle. Something to consider when you're using this rough textured lumber. I'm using it to match the existing house, but my God, that's a lot of paint. After your first coat, you can go around with your caulking gun and you can fill holes now as well. Sometimes you might find that easier. You know, get something on the wall, let it dry. You can also find all the old dents, any other issues that you're gonna have, right? Because this only takes 1 coat to cover. All right, so this would be boring if we make a whole video watching me stab a wall with a paintbrush. So let's just cut right into going about how to finish off a proper cedar deck with the best finish that you can get on the market. That's not gonna cause you a headache down the road. So now we're working outside. We're inside the shed. I'm working on our outdoor project, which is the shed floor. So we're gonna start inside the room. We'll work our way out, obviously. The product we're using today allows you to do 2 coats simultaneously. So you just need a couple minutes in between. So we can paint a few boards and then go back and do the second coat right away, which is great for scenarios like this because you don't have to do it over 2 days. You just have to be patient and give it a few moments to absorb into the wood. Now, if you're working on a brand new deck, then you've got clean wood. You still have to do some site preparation, okay? Because, like for instance, this brand new cedar wood, it has a sheen to it. When it goes through the mill, something happens to this wood where it doesn't have the ability to absorb. It's just too clean. And so what we're doing is we're using a 220 sandpaper just to lightly work it up a little bit to open up the texture in the pores so it can receive the product we're going to put in here real easily. If you saw the first video in the series, actually, we finished off with treating all of the wood with almost like a bleach cleaner, because the mold started to proliferate a little bit in the wood because it had been raining constantly here on site. And we didn't have anything to protect the wood from the rain. So if that happens to you, you can refer to that video, link in the description. But generally speaking, new wood, just as a quick light sanding, and then I'm going to grab the product and we'll start the painting process. Because, well, it's a staining process. We're actually staining, we're using a water-based product, and it absorbs real quick and easy. I picked up their C2 Guard, which is their water-based exterior formula, penetrating sealer stain. And I picked the color, they added the color, which is the UV protection. The important part about this, guys, is to know these products need to be stirred regularly, even while working. So this was mixed up and shaken for me 2 days ago. And already there's all kinds of sediment on the bottom. I'll just show you. Right? So that has to be stirred in now, which is why it's on the cardboard box. So I'm gonna have to be patient here for about 10 or 15 minutes and get this stirred up. If I was smart, I would have brought my mechanical mixer to put on my drill. Oh, wow. To be honest, I didn't expect this to happen after only 2 days. I got my deck board brush, which is perfect. It's the same width as the board, and it goes down the sides, okay, when you have the product on it, because you want to make sure your stain does all 3 sides in one pass. Now, this handle unscrews, all right? So you can work by hand, or you can use the universal thread of any broom or paint stick that's on the market, and you can do this standing up. That's what I intend to do, because I am getting too old to be on my knees all day long painting a floor. All right? Okay. So let's go through this. We're clean, we're sanded, we're swept, and now we're gonna just kerplunk it. Okay. Now it's water based, so we're gonna let it drip out. Since it's a penetrating sealer, even if it drips on the boards, it shouldn't leave drip marks, all right? So let's go over here, set the brush into the corner, and run the board. All right, now there's lots of product sitting on the surface. We're gonna let that absorb. We're not gonna try to drag it around. And it's not an oil, so we're not gonna go for coverage. We're just gonna go for, there we go. Get it wet it and forget it. All right, that's what we're gonna call it. That's it. Now, because I'm on a big stick, I can probably get 4 or 5 boards wide. By the time I'm that far, they'll be ready for me to go do a second coat. Oh, nice. Make sure we got lots of product here for this wood to soak up. Remember, if you have direct sun exposure, it's going to dry up a lot faster than if it's in the shade like this on a cool day like I got now. All of a sudden the weather changed, it started raining. Cold air is blowing in. It's going to take forever for this to dry the second coat, but that's all right, because we're working our way out of the room. Remember, with this kind of product, there's no need to wipe any excess off. It'll all penetrate. Might just take a little longer, all right? So the only other advice that I can give you now is keep your ass to the door whenever you're working, and you're gonna be just fine. So at the end of the day, we went with basic old-fashioned hardwood supports, and we just chiseled them out and created a little block so it stops on there. Now we got an awning, we got a bar. We are in business. The only thing I need now is a keg. Cheers till next time. Well, I hope this video today inspired you guys, because I really believe that you're your best contractor that you can get on your job site nowadays. Let's face it, between the shortage of labor and the cost of materials, something like this is very doable and very affordable if you build it yourself. Cheers to next time.